27 minutes after 7 here on the AM show. And today, June 19, is World Sickle Cell Day. It's a day set aside really in order for us to increase the awareness about the sickle cell disease and its cure among the common public. We do this every year really, but it's for all of us to be on the same page. So let me just introduce to you my guests. One of my guests really is not a stranger to the show, and you obviously would be seeing her on an occasion like this. Dr. Sickle is a medical officer, BMT Ghana, founder Sickle Life, and she's a person living with sickle cell disease. And Professor Kweku Ohene-Frimpong is President, Sickle Cell Foundation of Ghana, but he is also a renowned sickle cell expert. Good morning to you. Thank you for being here, Prof.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Sickle, welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, so how have you been managing, Sickle?
I've been well.
Yeah?
I've been very well, yes. I've been getting lots of support from friends and family, being compliant on my medication, avoiding precipitants of crisis, so I've been well.
Is it because you're a doctor, that's why you're able to keep to the routine?
Well, they actually say doctors are not the most compliant patients, so I guess I really prefer to be well and then active than be unwell and on admission. So I try to take all my medications and stay healthy at all times.
Prof, the Sickle Cell Foundation of Ghana, what exactly do you do?
Well, we formed the foundation in 2004 to become an advocacy organization for sickle cell disease as related to government, international sources, and to work with the patient support organizations in the country to promote the interests of people with sickle cell disease, see whether we can get resources to provide services. Yes.
The support, I understand, is really important, because I remember you mentioned that last year, and you mentioned it again as I asked the very first question. So how is the group, as in what kind of support do you give to persons with the disease?
That's the support groups. They do many things directly with patients. There's a Sickle Cell Association of Ghana, and I think probably that's the largest group. It's in several cities. And so they deal directly with patients and try to address patients' needs, educational needs, occasionally psychosocial counseling type needs, and sometimes also real material needs. Somebody may need money to do something, they will do that.
Can I conclude that every sickle cell, can I say patients?
Well, you can say people with sickle cell disease.
Okay, belongs to a group?
No, not at all. It's a very small minority. There are a large number of people with sickle cell disease in the country, and most of the country, other than Accra, Kumasi, to some small extent, Koprodia, maybe Sunyani and Ho, the association does not exist all over the country. We should. But there are patients being born with sickle cell disease and living and going through the difficulties with sickle cell disease all over the country. Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about this year. We're concentrating on children, correct?
Yes, as always. We should.
All right, but so what's the process? Can I know very early whether or not my child has sickle cell?
Yes. In fact, there's a very simple test that we do at birth that enables us to tell whether a child has sickle cell disease or is a carrier, has sickle cell trait or another abnormal hemoglobin. And the reason it's important to know them early is because children with sickle cell disease, if we don't know that they have that disease, can get a very serious infection and die very quickly. In fact, from 7 months to 12 months of age, in countries where there is no screening, that has the highest mortality of children with sickle cell disease. At that time, doctors examining them wouldn't even guess that they have sickle cell disease. They get a short disease with fever just like any other child, and they can get a very serious bacterial infection that will not kill other children that quickly, and they can die in hours from that. When children like that die in our part of the world, we tend to think that maybe it's malaria that caused it, because malaria also can cause rather rapid death. So the reason for us to test them is to know who has sickle cell disease so we can start them on treatment from 2 to 3 months of age. They take antibiotics twice daily for at least the first 5 years of life.
That early?
Yes. That has been the most important life-saving intervention that we have in sickle cell disease. Many countries, developed countries, US, UK, France, are screening babies for sickle cell disease. US and Brazil, every baby born is screened for sickle cell disease. We started the same project here back in 1993, started screening children in Kumasi area. That's where the ministry wanted us to start. And in 2010, the government declared a national newborn screening program. And we had a 5-year plan to scale up into the whole country. So by the end of 2016, we should have been testing every baby in Ghana. We're still testing only about 25,000 babies a year. We have 850,000 babies born in Ghana.
Why is that?
Money. Funding from government has been quite limited, and in fact, over the last 2 years, we have had virtually no funding.
Is it because you haven't been asking for it, pushing for it?
I've met with the current Minister of Health 5 times. I am always pushing for it. Much of our funding came through the National Health Insurance Authority, through the ministry to them. About 80% of the monies that we use from 2008 to now would have come from National Health Insurance. But in the last 2 years, we haven't received virtually nothing. We've received $50,000. Our budget is about $500,000 a year. From
$500,000?
No, Ghana cedis a year. Just to standstill budget, not expanding budget. But since December 2015, we have received only $50,000 from Ministry of Health.
We'll come back to that. I want us to talk about sickle cell. And maybe somebody hasn't realized how important it is to carry on with this. So Sefako, start with us. What must we know about sickle cell?
Well, sickle cell is a genetic disorder. It affects the red blood cells because we know that there are a number of components in the blood. There's red cells, which are for carrying oxygen around, white cells for fighting infections, platelets that help us clot the blood to clot so we don't bleed, and then plasma, the liquid component of the blood. So then in sickle cell disease, it's the red blood cells that are affected. There's a mutation, a change in the genes. So this causes the hemoglobin, the components within the cells that would carry oxygen around, to become changed. And then it affects the structure of the red cell. So rather than having a normal biconcave shape, you would have sickle-shaped cells, as the name suggests. These cells are sticky, they are hard, they are firm. So as they meander through vessels carrying oxygen around, they obstruct the vessels. So then we begin to have many of the complications or symptoms of sickle cell disease that you've mentioned. So Prof mentioned that early testing is important. And this is because when we test them early, then we can preempt some of the complications. We can counsel them so that they know what to do to prevent crises and then get some of the complications. So let's talk about maybe the symptoms. So for a mother or anybody watching us, you may have a child and then from time to time they look yellow. Their palms look yellow, their eyes look yellow, and that is just because they have abnormal cells that are breaking down at a faster rate than normal. And there's a substance in it that is released into the body that is yellow, and it's called bilirubin. So we see them and we say they are jaundiced, but then it's just because of the disease process. Also, there's anemia associated with the condition, and this is because, as we said, the problem is within the red cells. When you go to hospital, they check your HB, your blood level. So now if you have a disorder that's affecting the cells that have your HB, then your blood level would be low. And we've mentioned that these cells are also breaking down at a faster rate than normal. So for an average person, that could be about 120 days. But then in sickle cell disease, your cells are breaking down in about 20 days. So then your blood level would be low. And then this low blood level, especially in the children with the dizziness, palpitations, getting tired easily, if you are trying to study in school, obviously it will be challenging. Then there's also infections, as Prof has mentioned, because the part of our organ called the spleen, it helps us fight infections. But then in sickle cell disease, it doesn't function as well. Sometimes it's called autosplenectomy. The spleen will just stop working, like it would, because the vessels to the spleen are being blocked frequently. The spleen gets to a point where it can't do its job. So then there are specific type of organisms which needs the spleen to help us get rid of. But then if your spleen is not working, then you keep getting those infections. So in Ghana, I believe that the pneumococcal vaccine is now available. Yeah, so we give it to them as a prophylaxis to prevent them from getting those infections.
Okay.
Then As for the complications, they are mainly from head to toe. I keep saying you could get a stroke from sickle cell disease because the vessels in your brain are blocked. You can get blind. It's called retinopathy, sickle cell retinopathy, because the vessels to your eye, the retina, are obstructed. You can get something we call acute chest syndrome, and I mean acute. So it's when the person gets it, a lot of interventions need to be put in place. Otherwise, we can lose them. Their oxygen level will be going. It looks like a pneumonia, but then it's worse. It's more catastrophic, and we lose a lot of patients due to acute chest syndrome. I mean, it affects the heart. We have sickle cell hepatopathy. They can get even chronic kidney disease. So we know of old people or people who have hypertension or diabetes getting chronic kidney disease. But you can have somebody who has sickle cell disease, and just because of the condition, their kidneys stop working and need dialysis. Even the medications we take for pain can sometimes worsen this. So they have a sickle cell patient, and then apart from all the other complications, now they're on dialysis at some point in their lives. We know some of them who even have chronic leg ulcers because of the obstruction to the blood vessels. When they get a wound at the ankle, it doesn't heal. And some people have had it for 2 years, some have had it for 10 years. They keep dressing it, it seems to be healing, then it recurs. Like the surface just goes off again, and then it starts again. We have seen a number of also sickle cell patients who have a limp and be wondering what's going on. It may not necessarily be the crisis that we know or the acute pain, but it may be because they've had so many crises that the bone marrow, its blood supply to it has been affected. So then it becomes very soft, kind of like cheese, and then it breaks down. So then we call it avascular necrosis, usually in the hips, but then it can happen in the shoulder, it can happen in the vertebra. So then these are some of the medical complications. Also, there are psychological complications.
Okay. We'll come to that, which is also really important. But Prof, do we know the number of people in Ghana living with this disease?
We don't know the number that are actually living with it, but we know how many are born. Through the newborn screening, we estimate that Ghana has about 15,000 babies born every year with sickle cell disease. If we had followed a large number of them into older age, we would be able to estimate how many actually exist in the country. We can predict what we call prevalence. But we don't know, and that information is not known throughout much of Africa because we don't follow very large numbers of patients. But the fact that this disease affects 15,000 newborns, and we know that about half to 90% of them will die in the first 5 years of life without treatment. And so that's why it's critical. And this is the same for all of sub-Saharan Africa, that we lose about 50 to 90% of children with sickle cell disease in the first 5 years of life. And if you don't know them, they will never be part of the country's health statistics. And so it's an unseen cause of childhood mortality. You know, when we were going through the Millennium Development Goals, one of them was to reduce under 5 mortality. And those of us working in sickle cell disease had predicted that unless sub-Saharan countries address sickle cell disease, they would never achieve that. No sub-Saharan country achieved the Millennium Development Goals for under 5 mortality. So it's a major problem, but if you don't screen early, you don't know the size of the problem.
But this is preventable also, correct?
Yes.
So how come? Is it because the education, because I know that doing this once every year, of course, is not enough. But I thought that from where I sit, I thought that people are aware of this, and so we could prevent it somehow.
You can only prevent it if potential parents are aware of their status and they have received proper counseling. That is always easier said than done. Human beings don't relate to each other on the basis of their genetic makeup. We each carry 20 to 25,000 genes, and something can go wrong with every gene. Sickle cell is easy to test for, that's why we talk about it and we know it. But we don't have any program in any country in Africa where there is either systematic, government-sponsored screening of people before they get married. But basically, people make decisions about marriage based on love and other reasons. In order for them to take a genetic condition into consideration, it has to come before they are at the point of choosing to get married. It has to be something that is done at a younger age with a lot of education so that people can consider it in all the planning that they do. There are very few countries in the world that actually attempt to screen the citizens for any genetic disease or sickle cell disease. Only 2 countries actually do it systematically. Cuba does it when the mother is pregnant.
Okay.
And then they will, if the mother is a carrier, then they'll find the husband. They have very good public health system. And they offer them testing of the baby and early in the pregnancy, so they can basically terminate a pregnancy that carries the baby and try again, since each pregnancy has a 75% chance that the baby will not be ill. Bahrain, very small country, only 17,000 births a year. They have screened they screen all the high school age children, and then those who arrange their marriages, because they have arranged marriages, will take the results into consideration, and by so doing, they don't match people who are carriers.
Okay.
But other than that, in Western world and much of Africa, choices of who you marry is free. But people need to be educated. They need to be screened, properly educated, and counseled based on their results. Then they make their decision. Nobody wants a government to tell people whether you can have a child or not have a child. So we need to do a lot of education and make the screening also available to people. We can't just tell them and then they have to go and find where to get tested and get proper counseling.
Is it expensive if you wanted to do it by yourself whilst pregnant?
For the baby?
For the baby, yes.
Oh, that's expensive. In fact, we don't do that in Ghana right now. In Africa, in fact, the only place that I'm aware of is in Lagos. And we've sent some Ghanaian mothers to Lagos to have the test. We need it in Ghana, and I think we will establish it in Ghana.
But for now, the baby must come out first before you can test?
Yes, yes.
Okay, how early can you test this on a baby? Baby has to be how old?
No, in fact, the best time is we do it right at birth, before they go home.
In Ghana?
Yes. The newborn screening program that we have, we do it right when they're born. All we need is a small amount of blood. Just a few drops of blood is put on a filter paper, is dried, sent to that lab. We have one lab at Noguchi that does all the testing.
So even in Kumasi, you have to send the...
Yes. Newborn screening is a public health activity that, unfortunately, we don't have a lot in Ghana. In the U.S. and other places, they test for like 30 different diseases on just a few drops of blood. And it's always centralized. Because you have to organize the follow-up, the education, the counseling, and then directing those who are affected to a place of care. So it's a very well-organized program. And in Ghana, too, we've modeled our program after what has been successful elsewhere. So only one lab has handled all the testing. The samples are dried. They reach the lab within 24, 48 hours of the time it was drawn. It takes about 3-4 days to finish the work. Then the results are sent back to where they are. And those who have the disease, we don't wait for them to come for results. We actually track them and we go to their houses and then refer them to clinics so they can receive. Every one of them, our goal is to reach every one of them. We are successful in about 86% of the cases. Some of them, because they have to give you directions as to where they live. And it's not very easy for people to be able to direct you to exactly where they live. Now mobile phones are helping us. When we started the program, only 5% of the families had access to a phone, and most of it was at work. Now about 75% of them carry mobile phones. So we use the mobile phones now to contact them and tell them to come for your results.
So Fako, you're telling us about the emotional challenges as well.
Yes, so there are a number of psychological challenges, mostly related to stigma. So then you asked why there isn't so much attention to the condition, and it's because in large parts, people don't want to be associated with it. So even when you go to the government agency, they don't want to deal with sickle cell disease because there's so much stigma associated with it. And it comes in very simple ways. Sometimes you have a child with sickle cell disease who is in a senior high school and needs warm water to bathe with because we know cold precipitates crises. And then everybody is acting like it's they are being a spoiled child. Meanwhile, you won't allow an asthmatic to sweep because you know that it will cause an asthmatic attack. Sometimes there are people at work who fall ill from time to time. They need to take some time off, and then their bosses are not allowing them. Their colleagues are talking behind their back, and then it just makes the work environment unpleasant. And there are so many ways. You talk to children who have sickle cell disease, and they'll tell you that at one point or the other, somebody told them they'll die by 18 years. And then the consequence of this is that if you have a parent who believes that, and this is a true story I've actually heard, they may choose not to educate that child as well as the other children because, I mean, it will be wasted resources.
You die anyway.
Exactly. So these are things like the misconceptions and the myths about the condition fuel a lot of stigmatization, which, because it's a chronic condition. You need to have acceptance of the disease to be able to comply with medication. So if, for example, another one, spiritually, they'll tell you that you don't have faith. It's because you don't have faith that you have the condition. So then if you want to test your faith, or you want to show that you believe in God, then you'd avoid taking all your medications. Meanwhile, we know that these medications are life-saving. The condition on its own will do so many things, but then we are intervening to prevent them. So when people are not complying with their medication because of the stigma and psychological effects, then it becomes problematic. Quite apart from these, there are also the social implications. So one of them is obviously financial. If you have a family with even one child who has sickle cell disease, and unfortunately they have repeated crises, then it just means that they are going to spend days away from school, the child, so it will affect their academics, but then the parents would also spend days in the hospital. So some people have the social support. Your mother may be able to sit with the child while you go to work, but others don't. So then you end up spending a lot of time in the hospital, missing days at work, and then you may be sacked from your work, So then this would affect the family financially. The other children may feel like one child is getting all the attention. So then there are so many social things that we are talking about no bed syndrome currently. If you have a preventable disease, which you have so many of the people in your population having, so they are frequently on admission. You go to name any hospital, you can count sickle cell patients have occupied many of the beds because they'll keep coming from time to time. So if you have already you have low numbers of beds, and then there's a preventable condition, you're not doing anything about it, and then they keep coming, it's a lot of strain on social services. So then this is something that we all need to think about when we talk about prevention. There's advancements in medicine, true. There's hydroxyurea that Prof is dealing with and then making available to people in Ghana. There's bone marrow transplants as well. But then each person needs to ask themselves whether it's affordable or accessible to them, whether they have the social support to be able to cater for a child with sickle cell disease, whether if the child needs an urgent blood transfusion, they can make it happen. Because elsewhere, it shouldn't even be spoken about. It's routine. But then here, just to get that blood, there's so much that the parents has to do to ensure that this happens. So these are things that if we were to think about, maybe more of us would make the decision to prevent it rather than to try our luck and then see what happens.
But do you personally suffer from any form of stigmatization?
Well, I mean, there are people who suffer from stigmatization, but I don't think at this point anybody can stigmatize me. I may fall sick at work and then get a few unpleasant remarks, but then you can't stigmatize me. I mean,
You've gone past that
I've gone
stage.
past it.
You really don't care what people are saying behind your back.
I'm at that point where I really don't care what people say, even though they do say things. And if I happen to hear it, I'll just educate you about sickle cell disease so that we can move on.
But Doc, so you know the number of children has the whole screening, the early born screening, has it ceased?
No, it hasn't. Last year we screened 13,700 babies. That's the lowest number we've screened since 1995. So it's dropped drastically from as high as 30,000 to that low at a time when we should be expanding. So the foundation has used up all its own resources, money for research, equipment that we have put into the newborn screening. We're still pleading with government to fund the program. We keep looking externally also. Just recently, Novartis, that's the largest drug company in the world, came here. Their CEO actually came and we took him to meet with the president. They are committing to help us expand screening. But this is not something that another organization or country can do for us.
We have to own it.
We have to own it. Every baby born needs to be tested. We immunize all the children. It costs about $20 to screen, to immunize fully a baby born in Ghana. Newborn screening for sickle cell disease costs around $5.
Okay.
And so it's a question as to whether saving the lives of 7,000 to about 12,000 babies a year, that's 50 to 90% of the babies born here, is worth that expense. I think it is worth it. If not, then we should ask families if they will pay their 40 CDs or 50 CDs
For the
For
screening.
the screening. And not even giving families the opportunity. And losing a child with sickle cell disease, and you didn't know that you could have paid 50 cedis to discover the child and give them the cheapest antibiotic, penicillin, twice daily, and that could have saved the life of the child. For us in the foundation, that's the problem that we face. We are asking the ministry, if you won't pay for it, just give us the permission to ask families, and let's worry about those who cannot come. But because there's a law in this country, our insurance law says healthcare for children under 5 is free. Because of that, there's hesitation for government to say, okay, you can charge for this screening. So we are sort of trapped in this, and it's not fair to any family who lose a child to sickle cell disease, not knowing that it could have been discovered and it could have been treated to keep the child alive.
How much money would you need to still go on?
Well, to expand, if it costs $5 a baby, you can imagine, we have 850,000 babies now in Ghana. The scale of scaling it up to scale, we chose 5 years to give the National Health Insurance the opportunity to scale up their funding for the labs to be expanded so that they can handle it. So it will cost initially about $1 million to $2 million a year, but when it reaches full, the more you test, the cheaper the test becomes, because we buy things in bulk. Can Ghana afford it? Can most countries in sub-Saharan Africa afford it? Absolutely. We are spending more money doing things that, in my mind, in my estimation, we could apply to newborn screening for sickle cell disease. In the developed parts of the world, I never hear parents talk so much about, we could prevent the birth of these children. If you see healthy, well brought up, well treated children with sickle cell disease, medical students ask me, why would anybody think that they should prevent the birth of these children? When they come with these children to camp, see them in school, see them at the disease has changed completely in other places, not because they have more money, they're better organized. Penicillin is cheap. This hydroxyurea medication is a little expensive here. Novartis is going to help us get a cheaper version of it for Ghana and Africa. These are all affordable treatments. Unfortunately, the family itself has to bear all this cost because our insurance system is not supporting them. Then it's painful for them. But as a disease, it is not a very expensive disease to be able to do what we can to save people's lives and make their lives more fruitful.
Let me just ask the people watching us to join us. 0302211691 or 030221169102. If you have any concerns, any questions, you can give us a quick call on our conversation this morning. But Doc, so how many, no, if I say Doc, it could be you or him, so Prof.
Okay. Yeah, Prof.
How many newborns do we have every day? Or I don't know, how is it in
Ghana,
a year? Okay.
Ghana, the birth is somewhere between 800,000 and 850,000 babies are born in Ghana every year.
Okay.
The number is, of course, inching
So
up.
it's out of this figure that you're only able to screen about 13,000.
We screened 13,000 last year. That's very low. Our average since we started the project is about 3.5% of babies born in Ghana are screened. It's so small. It's the largest number in Africa. And when people start talking to me about how well we're doing in Ghana, I tell them we have to be all a bit ashamed that people think that screening 3% of your children for sickle cell disease is something great. It is not. Even if we were screening half, we could say that we've done something. What bothers me as a father, I have the child with sickle cell disease also, that as a father, that there are children being born every day with sickle cell disease. The parents don't know it, even the doctors taking care of them don't know it, and who can die in such a short period of time. This is what keeps me up at night.
But how many of those that you screen actually do have the condition, these babies?
In Ghana, it's just about 2%.
Okay.
It's the same for most of West Africa, Central Africa. About 2% of children born in Sub-Saharan Africa have sickle cell disease. That's about 400,000 babies in Africa every year.
That's still a lot. Let's speak to Grace. We'll come back. Grace is joining us from Bawi. Grace, good morning. Hello? Okay, we seem to have lost Grace. Kindly call us back. But Jonas is on. Hello, Jonas.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Jonas. Thanks for your call. Let's hear you.
I am a sickle cell patient in Bolga.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes. Jonas, we can hear you. Please go on.
Yes, I'm a sickle cell patient in Bolga. And actually what they've been talking about is true. The stigma is very high.
Hello, Jonas?
Yes.
Okay, you have to turn down the volume on your television set so we don't get any feedback.
The stigma is very, very serious.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so share your experience with us. Why do you say that?
You know, at work, you are sick, and you call and they tell you that it's like you don't want to work, and that is why you are always telling them that you are sick, you are sick, you are sick. Even people say that you have to go and see a specialist, like someone who can actually treat you from sickle cell. But you know, this disease can never be treated. You can only reduce the pain and other things. Hello?
Yeah. Hi, Jonas. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you managing the situation?
Yes. So currently I have a boss who at least understands that is how the condition is.
Okay.
So through that, anytime I call him and I tell him I'm not feeling well, then he understands me. But previously, wow, you dare not tell someone that you are sick, and you can't tell someone you can't come to work because maybe today you are sick, the next day you are sick again. It doesn't work that way.
Sure.
And in the Upper East region too, the regional hospital, the sickle cell unit is not functioning. I remember one time I had an attack, and we went there. They asked me to go and see the sickle cell unit, and there was no one there. Yes, there was no one. Even up to now, you go there, there's no one there to talk to.
Wow. Jonas, thank you very much for sharing your personal experience with us. We're grateful. Nancy Sam is in Takrady. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Nancy, for holding. Yes, go ahead.
Please, I have a sister who is a sickle cell patient.
Okay.
Good morning.
Nancy, we can hear you. You have a sister.
Yes, she's a sickle cell patient. And this week she has been complaining of stomach upset.
Okay. So what did you take her to the hospital?
At the moment, we are on our way to the hospital.
Okay. So what?
So I don't know if the stomach upset is part of the problems that they face.
Okay. All right. I'll have Sefako answer that. But let me speak to William. So Nancy, just hang in there. Sefako will address the question that you just asked. But let's speak to William. William is also in Takrady. William, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, William. Thanks for your call. You're on air.
Yeah. My wife is a lecturer. At the moment, she's a sickle cell patient. And at the moment, she had operation in one of her arms. And at the moment, she has another one. There's a problem with the hip. I want to know if there's any system that could help. At the moment, she limps. And she's pregnant at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, William. How old is the pregnancy, William, if you're still with us?
4 months.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, she had a baby. She had one child at the moment.
Okay. All right. Thanks. We'll come back to the rest of the phone calls, but Sefako.
Okay, so abdominal pain in a sickle cell disease patient. I don't know the age of the sister, but then sometimes the vessels to the intestines gets blocked, the same way they can have pain in their arm because the vessels get blocked. So they would have severe abdominal pain, and then when they go to hospital, everyone would think it's a surgical abdomen. That's what we call it, like an appendicitis or something that has to be cut. But then it's because of the sickle cell disease. So then it's best to go to the hospital to be examined for us to see what is going on. Also, in the younger children, when there's something we call splenic sequestration crisis. It can happen in anybody, but then in the older ones, we would expect that the spleen would have shrunken. So often in the younger children, when they have that crisis, blood pools into their spleen. So then they look pale, they are unwell, and then when you touch their abdomen, you can feel like your arm hits something in the left corner. So So that's their spleen. So sometimes they have pain associated with that if they are having splenic sequestration. But also for this person with abdominal pain, if she's having diarrhea and vomiting, then she needs to go to the hospital immediately, because the dehydration of the diarrhea and vomiting can precipitate a crisis.
Okay.
And we don't want that. So for a sickle cell patient, things like this are things that you need to rush to the hospital, so we identify the exact cause.
Okay.
And for the second patient, so he mentioned that she's had surgery in her shoulder and then now her hip, and she's limping. So that sounds like avascular necrosis, as I mentioned, when the bone becomes soft and breaks. So then...
but she's pregnant, she's 4 months pregnant, and she's been bleeding.
Okay, so if you are pregnant and bleeding, you need to go to the hospital, because there are many causes of bleeding in pregnancy. And also there's a higher risk of, higher risk in general for pregnant women who have sickle cell disease compared to the general population. So she really needs specialized antenatal care. She would be going to the hospital more frequently than the average patient, because sickle cell in pregnancy has so many possible complications: anemia, intrauterine growth restriction for the baby, the mother can be anemic, things like that. But for the avascular necrosis, what it says is that she has to, one, she's had the surgery, which is good. Two, she will need physiotherapy for assistance. If the hip one also becomes severe and limits her motion, she may also need surgery for it. They just put like a fake femoral head. They just they remove the dead bone and put a metal there to help with the movement. But then physiotherapy helps a lot, especially in the early stages. They'll give you range of motion exercises that would reduce the pain. Also help, they have a number of machines. There's a TENS, like infrared waves that they put there, massages, it helps with circulation. So when it starts, for anybody who is having avascular necrosis, you should go to the hospital. You'd likely be referred to an orthopedic surgeon, bone doctor, and then depending on the stage, you'd probably start with physiotherapy and painkillers. But then if it's bad and nothing can be done, you get the surgery done.
All right. Let's go back to the phone lines. Adama, I hope you're still on. Thank you very much for holding.
Yes, miss, I'm still on the line.
Okay, please go ahead. You're on air now.
Yes, I'm Lando Adama. I'm Lando Adama calling from Widana.
Okay, this is what we have to do. You have to turn down the volume on that television set, so you can only speak to us through the phone, so we don't get the feedback. If you're joining us on 0302-211-69102, kindly turn down the volume on your television sets.
I've turned down the volume.
Okay, all right, please go ahead.
I'm Lando Adama calling from Widana.
Okay.
I have a child who is sickle cell. He's about 5.5 years now. Well, just like doctor was explaining to us, it looks as if there's no treatment. What we can do is to manage, the sickle cell, but looking at my distance to the nearest hospital is about 20 miles.
20
miles, yes, please.
Okay.
So I want doctor to brief me on how we can manage this, so that in case it starts, maybe we can manage and go to the hospital.
Okay.
Because
all right.
I heard him talking about penicillin. I don't know how we administer the penicillin.
Okay. I'm not sure. He didn't mention self-administer that, so we would ask him. Thank you very much for the question, though. I think it's really important. Let's speak to Solomon. Solomon is in Ho. Good morning, Solomon.
Good morning. My name is Solomon.
Solomon, you have to speak up a bit for us.
Yeah, my name is Stephen, not Solomon.
Oh, Stephen, apologies.
Yes, please. Yeah, good morning once again.
Good morning.
Yeah, I happen to be a sickle cell patient.
Okay.
And it's not, a good experience to be a sickle cell patient. I quite remember when I was young, during our school days, I used to miss a lot of classes. When it's very serious during the rainy season, there's a lot of crisis and stuff. But fortunately for me, my dad was at the head of affairs. He did everything possible to help us. We are 4 in our family, so me being the first child and the last born, we are the sickle cell patient.
Okay.
And I happen to be SC, and my other sibling is also SC. I've given birth, and my child is with a career, but I always make sure that I used to have frequent attack when I was younger, but now I've been able to check my diet. I make sure I'm always on my folic acid. That one I don't miss. I always make sure that my child is also on his folic acid medication every day, you know. And one thing I've realized that a lot of excitement brings the attack or the crisis.
A lot of excitement.
So, yeah, it's like when you're overexcited,
okay,
you can have some sharp, pains that runs to your abdomen, you know.
Okay.
And when it happens, or when you get fighting seriously, the crisis comes. Yeah. So to all those sickle cell patients out there, it's not easy. You know, it's difficult for people to understand you, especially when you're working. You know, because anytime you call to ask for excuse, they see you are being labeled as you're not serious or you don't like coming to work. Those are some of the problems we always face.
Okay.
But God being so good, I hardly have attack.
Okay.
It counts minorly, then it goes. Just
okay.
this Saturday, I was in class and I felt some knee pain, but I just had a painkiller that was broken, and that is all.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Well,
Solomon, we thank God for your life and thank you so much for sharing your very personal experience with us. We'll have to leave the phone calls here, unfortunately. But Adama also asked a very important question. As a parent who lives like 20 miles, it would take 20 miles for him to get to the nearest facility. So what can he do?
Well, I think for the child is 5.5 years old. We are finishing writing guidelines for managing sickle cell disease in Ghana. And one of the recommendations that the doctors in Ghana felt strongly about was that penicillin that elsewhere we enforce for the first 5 years and make it optional. They really thought that in our part of the world where infections are so common, they should take the penicillin for at least 10 years. And so even at 5.5 years of age, lucky to be alive, I think that he should talk to the doctors there about this penicillin for children with sickle cell disease.
It's not something you can get over the counter, right? It's
not
something you do by yourself.
You shouldn't, really. Antibiotics shouldn't be, people should not be administering antibiotics to themselves. But they should go to doctors. Many doctors in Ghana, to be honest, don't know that that's part of managing sickle cell disease. But I think that since he made this call, it means that he's an advocate in my mind. He should talk to the doctor that he's heard that these children are supposed to take penicillin twice daily, and he would like her child to be on it also. It's taken by mouth, so it gets prescribed like every, for 3 months supply or so, and you give it by mouth.
Okay.
It's not by injection, but he shouldn't do it on his own. He should really be monitored by the doctor.
Okay. Let's get, you want to say?
Yeah, I want to say, in addition to that, because he lives so far away from a health facility, he has to take note of the things that cause crisis in the child or precipitate. So if it's cold, if it's excitement, as someone mentioned, if it's stress, playing too much, he needs to know and then limit them. Make sure that the child is always in warm clothing, bathe warm water, wear sweater, things like this, because you live so far. Then the first aid for crises, usually we tell them to give them water, hydrate. When they come to the hospital, that's what we do, also hydrate them. But then, when you are not well, you don't want to drink water, but try and encourage the children to drink water, juice, anything, and then start with a painkiller. People think paracetamol is not good, but then it's a very effective analgesic. So just start with paracetamol, and then if after a while it's not working, a little maybe brufen or diclofenac. We don't really recommend it for sickle cell patients, but then you do that. Then you'd try and move to the health facility as quickly as possible. So then even just paracetamol may make a world of difference. Other things are massages, warm compresses, just first aid, but you need to move to a health facility. And if you live so far, then it's important that you start off early. And also because he's so far away, when the child is well, you should try to go for review so that we'll know what is happening with her, and we don't wait till an acute event before we are all running around. And the second question, yes, he mentioned that excitement causes crisis for him. Yes, so there are so many things that cause crisis for different people. So it's best that the patient identifies their precipitants and then stays away from it. For me, for example, I like cold. I can be in 16 degrees AC forever. But then when one drop of rain touches me, I get a crisis compared to being in a cold place for a long time. So then that's what I know for myself. So I try to avoid the rain at all costs. So then let's all identify our precipitants. And then.
Yeah, I'd like to add that it's true that there's things that you can do to try to prevent crisis, but we have looked at this very carefully, and 80% of the time when people have crisis, it's not because they did or didn't do anything. we don't know why crisis, pain crisis is what we're talking about. We don't know exactly what sets it off in the body. In fact, for me, the question is, why aren't they having crisis every day? Because their blood actually doesn't change when they have crisis. Okay. So what actually leads to the pain at that time? Everybody will give you an answer because they know what they were doing just before it, but whether it actually is what caused it. So there are few things that we think from experience may do it, but I don't want people to think that if they have pain, it's because they didn't do something. Or mothers usually would say, you didn't drink enough, or you didn't do this, and you play too hard, or all of this.
So don't be too hard.
Yeah, don't be, right, exactly.
Okay.
It's
all
not
right.
something.
We have to go, but there's, you can have a bone marrow transplant done at the Greater Accra Regional Facility.
Yes. So that's the cure for sickle cell disease. A lot of people have heard about it online and are excited about it. It costs anywhere from like $100,000 and more, like in Europe and America.
Okay.
I think you can get it a little lower in South Africa and India, but then in Ghana, it just started. The current price is about $15,000 to $20,000. It's still on the high side for the average Ghanaian, but then there are people who can afford that. So then if you have a child with sickle cell disease and you are interested in the cure for it, especially for those with severe disease, so someone who has had a stroke or have been told that their, we call it TCD, their levels in their brain, the scan they did is high, so they have high risk of a stroke, they can come to the Greater Accra Regional Hospital. We'll do a test where we just take some samples. It's just a cheek DNA, like it's called HLA actually. So we take that sample, take for the relatives, then when we get the results, we'll know whether there's anyone in the family who matches. Okay. So then we want to get somebody who doesn't have sickle cell disease as the donor. So if the child is SS, we are looking for an AS sister or brother or AA. Then we'll go through a process that is quite long, but then it's simple, and then they'll change
because of time, I want to leave the rest for people. So you tell people how they can get in contact with you.
Okay, so for the bone marrow transplant, you can come to the Greater Accra Regional Hospital or Google bmtghana.org to get more information. And for general sickle cell related information, you can check out sicklelife.org, Facebook Sickle Life, Twitter, Instagram at sickle_life.
Okay. So and Prof, the Sickle Cell Foundation?
The Sickle Cell Foundation, as I said, the support groups deal directly with patients, but they can always call the Sickle Cell Foundation.
So you are the bigger umbrella. They just
we just
you cover them.
We don't want to take their work away from them.
Okay, sure.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the education. Sefako, you want to say one more thing?
Yes. So because today is World Sickle Cell Day, we've had a number of projects. Today we are having a deba at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital Sickle Cell Clinic. It's on sickle cell disease, the challenges, prospects, and the way forward. Every authority in sickle cell disease in Ghana will be there. Prof is going to be there. Dr. Faulkner from the bone marrow group is going to be there. Dr. Brew. Basically, everybody sickle cell in Ghana will be there. So come and then let's talk about sickle cell disease. Let's learn. And then
so from what time to what time?
It starts from 8 a.m. Till about 3 p.m. So there'll be so many talks and sessions. So please join us.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof, for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Always. Stay with us. We have many more conversations to come here on the AM show.